you. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to members and officers joining us for Cabinet tonight, as well as everyone who's watching online or might be catching up on the YouTube channel later. Before the meeting gets started, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to take attendance of officers who are attending virtually and to explain how proceedings this evening will work.
Good evening. Can I confirm the following officers joining remotely can hear us and we can hear them? Geraldine Goodwin.
Yes, I'm here, can hear you, thank you.
Evening. Martin Lawrence.
Good evening, present.
Good evening. Anne Banner.
Anne won't be attending, she doesn't need to be here this evening.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other officers in attendance remotely tonight that I haven't called out? If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions? I will now hand back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Item number 1 this evening, I have apologies for absence, none received, and I can see that everybody is present and in attendance. Item number 2, notification of other business. There's been no other business notified. Item number 3, Chair's announcements. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recordings will be available on the Council's YouTube channel, as well as on the Council's ModGov site, alongside the documents produced for this evening's meeting. Members are also reminded that this Council has declared both a climate emergency and an ecological emergency. These are serious decisions and mean that, as they are emergencies, all of us, officers and members, bear that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. Members are also reminded to make declarations of interest before an item, and a detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the Chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and will still be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and, wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. So, item number 4, public participation. This evening we have none, which brings me on to item number 5, which are those matters that have been referred to us from other committees. Item 5A is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Empty Homes Strategy referral, which we will consider alongside item number 7. 5B is the Overview and Scrutiny Council Tax Premiums for Empty and Second Homes, which we'll consider with item 9. However, I will be taking item 5C as a separate standalone item as our first substantive matter of business this evening. And item 5D is the Finance Audit and Risk referral around the revenue budget, which will be considered alongside item number 10. So, back to item 5C, which, colleagues, if you're looking for the papers, they're in one of the supplementaries separate to the agenda pack. This is the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee's second quarter investment strategy, capital and treasury review referral. I will pass over to Councillor Sean Nolan, Chair of Finance, Audit and Risk, to present that referral.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation to Cabinet is approving the adoption of the investment strategy. We had a very good presentation on it. A lot of the issues raised as well around it, I think, focused on the elements around borrowing in future and understanding the effect that would have on the council. There was a lot of discussion around, where are we? There's a lot of discussion around those future borrowing rates, longer term, how that would affect finances. And of course, then it moved on to the future waste contract as well, in terms of some of the items that will be contained within there. I think a lot of the discussion that did occur was, I think, based on some of the concerns that councillors have about all finances that we're currently experiencing across the country. A lot of the questions raised, I suppose, looked at some of those riskier elements as well. Thanks to Ian for answering so many of the questions on the night. I think some of them were fairly detailed and in-depth. But yeah, I think a large part of what we're sort of looking for was around understanding the risks involved in the investment strategy and how that would be managed going forward, and just ensuring that we'd get that feedback in future to be able to scrutinise as part of the committee's work.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Sean. Does anyone have questions for Councillor Nolan on the referral from FAR? Nope, I'm seeing no questions. Thank you again for you and the committee's really hard work and input on this. It's really valuable, I think, that we hear from these referrals and have them brought before us in Cabinet. And thank you as well for those recommendations. I'm going to pass over to Councillor Albert, apparently now to present his report on this item.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. And I think obviously thanks to the finance committee as well for obviously their consideration of this item. I mean, not really sort of, I think, I mean, obviously too much to I think to add really to the recommendations that are in front of you, and obviously will be in relation to the this paper particularly. We've obviously looked at a range of capital projects going forward as part of the budget workshops in early November. So really, I think just to obviously move the recommendations in front of you, Chair, and obviously happy to open to questions to colleagues.
Thank you very much. And just to assist, the recommendations, colleagues, are that Cabinet recommends to Council that they approve the adoption of the investment strategy as attached at Appendix A, including the capital programme and prudential indicators. This incorporates the changes referenced in paragraphs 5.1 to 5.3. And that Council approve the adoption of the 4 clauses in relation to the Code of Practice on Treasury Management as detailed in paragraphs 810 to 816. So Councillor Albert has proposed those, but also asked for questions. So I shall take questions from any colleagues. Seeing no questions, recommendations proposed. Could I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Willoughby seconds. Any debate? Seeing nobody indicate. All right, could we have a vote then, please, Susan? I can only abstain. Yeah. If the technology is misbehaving, we can do it manually.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Right. Item number 6 is update the Common Housing Allocation Scheme. I have Councillor Prendergast to present the report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to put on record my thanks to everyone in the housing team who's involved in this, in particular Thierry Strawn, who does an excellent job in producing these documents and putting them forward. So thank you very much. I appreciate it's a very lengthy document. I just want to highlight the importance of these changes and why they're needed. So changes to the housing allocation scheme can ensure that we provide affordable, safe and suitable housing to those most in need. This requires re-evaluation of the criteria used to determine eligibility, taking into account the scarcity of affordable housing and social housing in our district. I am pleased to see that the proposed major changes, as set out in 8.3 of the report, had a majority, received a clear majority, and this brings us broadly in line with other local authorities. Overall, the changes made are fair and will help ensure that the council continues to prioritise households in the greatest need. What the changes also highlight is what I'm sure we're very, very aware of, is the essential need for more truly affordable housing in our district and the country as a whole. Whilst we can move towards that with ensuring that we have up to 40% affordable housing in our local plan, which is excellent. I hope the government now and whatever political colour in the future understands that this is a pressing priority that requires bold leadership to help solve the housing crisis. In view of this, I would like to move the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Prendergast? Seeing no one indicate. Okay. Right. The recommendations have been proposed. Do we have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Hoskins. Any debate on this item? No, I'm seeing no one indicate. I think other than just to echo Councillor Prendergast's comments, thank you very much to the team for your continued hard work in this area. I think it is very much appreciated. I think that this is an excellent report and supporting documentation. Could we have a vote, please, Susan?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Right, thank you very much. Item number 7 is the empty homes strategy. There's also an updated version of the empty home strategy in the supplementary papers that were uploaded earlier today, which does contain the track changes from the original as well, which might provide colleagues with some assistance. The referral, we have a referral on this item from overview and scrutiny. However, the chair and vice chair are not able to be with us this evening, but Councillor Prendergast, I believe you were present for that meeting and have commented about some of the debate to me privately. Would you be prepared to provide colleagues with a little bit of the debate and the takeaways from that meeting to support the referral?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Chair. I'll start off with that before I go into the reasons why I'm extremely pleased to bring this report before you. So overview and scrutiny, some of the points were raised is in terms of how we ensure that we bring properties back into use and the point of the strategy. And I will provide a little bit more commentary on that when I read my speech. But those are the main focus, is what can we actually achieve with this strategy, essentially. And I think my answers provide a clear reasoning behind that in the document before you, overview and scrutiny, but I'll go into that in a bit more detail. But before I do so, I just wanted to again place my thanks to the team in producing this. This has been a long time coming. I'm really pleased to bring this to Cabinet. And also I think it's worth mentioning that this was something that was started under Councillor Gary Grindle. And I think that's worth bringing to Cabinet's attention. And we've managed to push this forward. And I'm going to explain now the reasons as to why this is extremely important. So the empty home strategy is a key part of helping meet housing need, and it will feed into our housing strategy. Empty homes are a wasted resource, and they often are the subject of complaints from communities, with some empty homes being run down and dilapidated. Occupied homes can also boost the local economy. In summary, as outlined in significant detail within this report, and it is a long report, but the accompanying strategy is important for addressing shortages, revitalising communities and stimulating the local economy, and also in line with our climate change emergency, promoting environmental sustainability. So this strategy, and I just want to bring to the attention of the Cabinet, the track changes strategy is the correct one. There are 2 minor amendments to the amended strategy at 5.1 and 8.6 that should read, in terms of the resource, 0.5 rather than 0.15. So it is half a post. So do bear that in mind. It isn't 0.15, it is at 0.5. And the idea behind the strategy is it's pitched as a collaborative nudge in the initial stages, which will hopefully spark owners into action. The intention is to work cooperatively with homeowners to try and encourage them to permit pre-occupation, or to assist them in enabling as necessary works if they are unable to recognise the most appropriate actions which are already available to them. The strategy seeks to interact with homeowners before the 2-year stage, as this is the stage when there will be a good indication of the homes possibly moving to become long-term empty, and it will be a good first opportunity to help offer guidance to the owner who may not understand the options available to them. Ultimately, we want to bring properties back into use. At this number, the number in this group also starts to be more manageable, and only a small number of these homes remain unoccupied beyond the 5 years. Initial intervention may be sufficient to expedite the transition into occupancy quicker. Once this strategy has been adopted, the council actively promote it to all levels of our communities, including owners of known empty homes and other residents, to advise them of our intention to address the issues caused by empty homes. So this is very important because we will be reliant on the community to report this issue to us so we can actively resolve them. Long-term empty homes should be challenged, especially due to the physical and political impact they can have on a local district, and especially given the future financial restraints likely to be placed on local authorities. I'm extremely pleased to bring this to Cabinet. As I touched upon with it, overview and scrutiny, hopefully I've addressed some of the concerns that were raised by particular members of overview and scrutiny. It is worth bearing in mind that it received unanimous support. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Prendergast. Do you colleagues have any questions for Councillor Prendergast, either on the substantive report or any follow-ups from the scrutiny referral? Yes, Councillor Allen.
Just wanted to ask, so it's the empty home strategy, it's not a legal requirement, but it is important. You've outlined the positives of adopting it. What are the negatives if we don't? What's the possible outcome if we don't adopt it?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Allen. As alluded to in my initial summary, there is less opportunity to bring properties back into use, which is really important given the scarcity of housing that we have in the district and beyond. But also, they are a source of complaints. So if we don't deal with empty homes, you have the possibility of having properties that are run down, neglected for long periods of time, and the resource that takes up, because obviously that impacts on other service areas such as environmental health and pretty much all service areas. So this strategy gives us the ability to be able to manage this at the earliest stage, to work with these people to bring these properties back into use, which will ultimately help our local communities. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else indicate. So, Councillor Prendergast, are you moving the recommendations in that report?
I am. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, Councillor? Councillor Brown for variety, I think, colleagues. Councillor Brown to second this one. Any debate? Yes.
Yeah, I was quite keen to second this because not long after I became a town councillor in 2018, we had a group of residents actually came and present to us precisely about an empty home that was causing a serious amount of distress to the local residents, particularly to the neighbour for whom it was a semi-detached property, and had been, I think it was empty for nearly 25 years in total, and has now been resolved, thankfully. But it was really interesting to hear how much distress it can cause. And so there are so many drivers for this. Obviously, we want as many homes to be occupied as possible because there's a shortage of homes across our district, but also it does cause a lot of distress and a lot of resources in terms of environmental health and people having to follow up. So I welcome this strategy, and I just want to put on record my thanks to Gary Grindle, because when I first raised it after that town council presentation, he was absolutely on board with it and started to drive this forward. It's a shame it's taken so long, but we have got there, and I want to totally endorse it and support it, and I'm really welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further points in the debate from colleagues? Nope. Right. Could we have a vote, please, Susan?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. That brings us on to item number 8, which is the North Herts Council Digital Strategy. I have Councillor Albert to present on that report.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. And as colleagues will be aware, as a council, we're undertaking what I think is a really exciting transformation of our digital systems in order to improve the experience for our customers. Now, let me pause there, because obviously we've had one or two, I think, fair comments at previous meetings, including scrutiny about the use of the word customers. And certainly, I think perhaps if Cabinet is in agreement, that more than happy to take this document away, just to look at whether we should be using residents or businesses in some areas of the document. But as I say, it is important to improve the experience of all those that we deal with, be them residents or businesses, our staff, and of course our councillors. The report sets out the work we are undertaking, and therefore I won't repeat all of that in this introduction. Our new customer relation management system is launching imminently, and is the first stage of utilising our new low-code digital platform, which is intended to become the core platform for as many of our service areas as possible. And it certainly makes actually providing our services and providing actually digital services significantly easier. As we roll this work out to different parts of the organisation, it's important that we have a clear vision and some core design principles that will help shape the platform and keep the team focused on the outcomes that we need to deliver. As the digital strategy makes clear, this work is not just about the technology, it is much more than that. It's an opportunity to develop our organisational skills and capabilities so that we can deliver on our ambitions now and to continue to build upon them for the future. So colleagues, I think with that sort of short introduction, happy to move this paper. Also, just happy to thank Jo Duffy, who sadly can't be with us this evening. I do wish her and her family well. But obviously, but thanks for all their work of Jo and her team in getting to where we've got to in the paper for you, and happy to move the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Albert? Nope. All right. Councillor Albert's moved the recommendations. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Allen. And is there any debate on this paper? Nope. I'm seeing no one indicate, other than just to reiterate the point that Councillor Albert made around the use of language, customers, stakeholders, residents, etc., etc. I think it is important that we do bear in mind that we are using the appropriate phrasing and framing things for what we're trying to deliver, not just in respect of this strategy, but actually in all of the communications that we're sending out and that we're considering across the council. So we know who our audience is, and we're speaking to the right people in the right way, in keeping with our priorities. So I think that recommendations have been proposed and seconded. Could we please have a vote, Susan?
Okay, Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Right, so that's item number 9, which is the council tax premiums for empty and second homes. There was also a referral from overview and scrutiny on this. So Councillor Albert, if you have any points relating to the scrutiny debate and comments that you'd like to present as part of your report, please do so. Otherwise, it's over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think broadly, scrutiny obviously adopted and recommended this report to council. There was a quite a wide-ranging debate around council tax, looking at second homes, as to whether actually we think this is something that we should be doing. And in addition to that, obviously looking at what other councils across the area are doing. But say broadly, obviously the scrutiny are recommending this paper in front of us, but I'll certainly try and I think pick up some of the points that were raised in that discussion. The paper complements, I think, and provides some tools in respect of the paper we discussed earlier on around empty home strategy. This report proposes some changes to council tax premiums on empty and second homes and follows the government's updated legislation in relation to this. Now, the two aspects to consider: empty homes and second homes. Now, legislation previously enabled local authorities to introduce a council tax premium based on the length of time a property has been empty, and premiums were paid in addition to the 100% council tax liability. Where properties empty for 2 years but less than 5 can receive a 100% premium. Properties empty for 5 years but less than 10, a 200% premium, and properties empty for more than 10 years, a 300% premium. In 2019, the council considered the premiums and opted to introduce the current 100% premium for properties empty more than 2 years as of the 1st of April 2020. The recent change in legislation allows us also to apply a premium on homes that have been empty for more than 1 year. Analysis carried out in December reported there were 157 properties that have been empty for over 2 years. Of these, 121 are regularly paying 200% council tax, which equates to approximately 292,000 across all the preceptors. North Herts Council share is around 36,500. 7 had not had the premium applied using discretion available, and 29 are not currently paying regularly. But I think one of the important things to mention there, where I mentioned anything to do with money, I think in this isn't about a financial driver. This is actually about changing behaviour on homes, and not obviously looking at ways to raise revenue for the council specifically. Despite this, I think the number of empty homes continues to rise across our area and brings a number of challenges to the district. An empty home strategy has been discussed earlier, and that sets out our plans to tackle the issues more widely. This paper is specifically in relation to our ability to increase council tax premiums to encourage empty homes to be brought back into occupation. Now, the rise of empty homes and second homes is a national challenge, and inconsistencies within legislation have been identified whereby a premium can be avoided by the owner furnishing an empty home, which turns it into a second home, which currently has a maximum charge of 100% and no premium. And indeed, in North Herts, which we are looking to seek to change immediately, we also give a 10% discount on second homes. Government has introduced sections within the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act to address these inconsistencies, and our recommendations in the paper reflect those changes. Contacting neighbouring authorities, and of those that responded, most are not implementing the change until the 1st of April 2025. However, some of those are already charging the maximum allowable premiums, like in Welling, Hatfield, Hartsmere, Central Beds and Dacorum. The only change that we will be introducing from the 1st of April 24 affects properties empty over 5 years only, and will impact 43 properties. And we will immediately write to those property owners, if this is agreed, to make them aware of the change. Changes to premiums on empty homes can be effective from the 1st of April 24, whilst premiums on second homes can only be implemented from the 1st of April next year. 1 year's notice is required. The expected impact of additional premiums is that homeowners will be encouraged to bring empty properties into use and revert the use of second homes to primary residences, which support the aims of the empty home strategy. Our policy on this will be finalised once all the exceptions have been confirmed by government. We expect this to include properties undergoing probate, properties being actively marketed, undergoing major repairs, annexes forming part of the main dwelling, job-related dwellings, and indeed some seasonal homes where year-round or permanent occupation is prohibited. But I think in moving forward on this, Chair, I think what I would hope is that we would, and Cabinet would agree, the strategy that's in front of you. We think it's balanced and fair, complements the empty homes strategy, and I would hope that Cabinet will unanimously support the recommendations in front of you this evening. And indeed, obviously, I'm happy to move those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Albert on this report? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. And I agree that it complements the empty home strategy. I just wanted to know, what was the rationale for delaying or phasing in the increases?
So, I mean, in terms of the second homes, we can't do that till next year because we have to get the required notice. In terms of the and in terms of the other area of empty homes, and this is something that Councillor Prendergast and I discussed with with officers, and also I think Councillor Barnes and Councillor Winstanley were involved as our deputies in those meetings. What we believe that actually that it was important to actually be able to send a message to those who've in the position that things are changing, to give them time, and I think to do that, because clearly to do that sooner is only just a few weeks away. So we thought the balance of and fair thing to do was actually to manage a transition to that change, which would take that extra period of time, and that's felt like on balance the right thing and probably I think the fair thing to do.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
I'm trying to word this right. Just reading through the exceptions and exemptions and the points regarding the government regulations that are susceptible to change, etc. What I can't see, because obviously this isn't necessarily the whole thing, what would be the situation for empty homes or ending up with an empty home or anything along those lines when it comes to another pandemic or some other global thing? Is there a pandemic clause in there or anything like that? Or just thinking ahead really far.
We operate around a discretion. We do have some discretion there, but I don't know whether Geraldine, who's been Goodwin, who's been operating the policy, would maybe just like to come in around some of the discretions that we operate, and indeed, obviously, what we did during the pandemic itself, which, from my recall, was we obviously put some of these things on hold at the time. But I don't know if we can bring Geraldine in if she's with us online.
Yep, I'm here. Sorry, camera was off. Yes, I mean, I think given what Councillor Albert said about the exceptions that are going to be contained within some sort of regulations or guidance, we still have our own level of individual discretion, which we use on a case-by-case basis. So for instance, if there are properties that are about to hit the premium, but come to us and say, look, it's about to exchange, but it's not going to be for another month's time, we would use our discretion. Again, with properties that possibly have an age restriction on them. So selling it, you can only sell it to somebody, say, over the age of 55. We would consider those using discretionary powers. So if heaven forbid, we had another pandemic, we would use our discretion in the same manner on a case-by-case basis. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that answers it. Thank you very much, Geraldine. That's really helpful.
Okay.
Any further questions from colleagues? Nope. Councillor Albert has proposed the recommendations. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Prendergast. Thank you very much. And could we have, is there any debate before I move us on to the vote? Yes, Councillor Prendergast.
Yeah, I just want to make a few comments. First of all, as you can imagine, I really welcome this document. It complements and feeds into the empty home strategy excellently. In regards to the timescales, we had a long conversation over that. Ultimately, we are a people first council, and I think this is a fair and reasonable approach that fits into that objective. And in relation to the second homes, it's absolutely right and proper that we make this change, and it brings us into line with most other local authorities. So I think this is absolutely excellent, and I really welcome it, and I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much. Any further points of debate? I'm seeing no one indicate. Could we have a vote, please, Susan?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Which brings us on to item number 10, which is the revenue budget. We have a referral from Finance, Audit and Risk on this. So could I ask Councillor Nolan to present the referral, please?
Thank you, Chair. So there's a number of recommendations included in the report. I think in terms of discussion, I'll touch on a few of them. Obviously, as is usual, the assumption is made that we will go for the maximum increase in council tax at 2.99%. That's part of the assumption that's generally made with the funding formulas that are set out by government. Although on top of that, this time there has been a noted increase of core spending by 4%, which is very welcome. But again, I think as Ian pointed out, does come with a few strings attached in terms of other products that need to be sent back that are still yet to be determined. So we'll look forward to hearing what they are in the future. A lot of the discussions were really around, I suppose, some of those revenue areas that currently, make up part of the income we receive, particularly around parking, which sadly seems to have plateaued and is unlikely to reach previous levels. So there's some discussions around whether or not we now have to essentially reset our sites in terms of what is recorded there and what we expect in the future. More positively, Careline appears to be a good driver of revenue, which is supporting the council. There's also a bit of debate around, obviously, with the new leisure contract coming into force next year, looking at the provisions around that, and just getting confirmation again that the previous structure around VAT and business rate efficiency was still in place, which we had confirmed it was, which is obviously, again, assist in terms of increasing the revenue that can be brought in there. Towards the end, I think a lot of the discussion was around those risks again, especially looking into next year, but particularly looking into the future. It was raised, part of Ian's responsibilities to set out that realistically we are looking at a more troubled future beyond next year in terms of what we expect in terms of finances, and clearly there are going to be decisions that need to be taken at that point. I think for now, however, the budget is set out, again, it's been recommended for approval. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Nolan. Before I take any questions for Councillor Nolan, just to pick up on one point that he made around the priorities, I guess, and the ask from central government that is attached to this funding. We received a letter from Michael Gove and his ministerial team yesterday, which sets out the 4 main areas. I will simply read what those areas are, and if members would like to hold any comments that they may have for the debate, I would be grateful. So the 4 areas that central government is asking councils to consider carefully is, firstly, transformation of services to make better use of resources. Second, opportunities to take advantage of advances in technology and make better use of data to inform decision-making and service design. Third, ways to reduce wasteful spend within systems, including specific consideration of expenditure on consultants and discredited staff, equality, diversity and inclusion programs. This does not include programs designed to promote integration and civic pride and counter extremism. And 4, barriers preventing activity that the government can help to reduce or remove. So these are our productivity aims and objectives, colleagues, from central government. I have read them verbatim at this point in time. Are there any questions for Councillor Nolan? I'm seeing no questions. Thank you very much for your and the committee's hard work on this item. It is greatly appreciated. I shall now hand over to Councillor Albert to present the main report on the revenue budget.
Chair, just before we do that, could I seek your advice, or indeed possibly Mr. Cooper or the monitoring officers, advice. I may have missed a recommendation under the investment strategy that we looked at earlier, and whether there's an opportunity still to make sure we cover that off. It was in relation to Howard Park. If I could seek advice from you, Chair, as to whether that, and apologies that I think it may have inadvertently missed that as part of the that discussion. On the, it's partly, I think, my fault, but obviously it's not on the agenda, and that's why I was looking for it actually to be further down the agenda item. Yeah.
So the advice that I'm hearing, Councillor Albert, is we can cover that off at council, but if you want to elaborate just for transparency and just let colleagues know what that recommendation might have looked like.
I can, yeah, and on that note, and I say apologies, Chair, for that omission. What I wanted to do there was that to seek Council's approval that the capital allocation for the Howard Park kiosk be brought forward into 23-24. That then would allow the work to be completed by the Easter holidays, so the kiosk can be refurbished and in time and open indeed for the school Easter holidays. That was what was the intention, and apologies that I inadvertently missed that earlier.
That's absolutely fine. Apologies accepted, and we'll look forward to hearing more at full council. Right, so revenue budget report.
Just scroll back if you give me a moment. So I think the key thing here for cabinet colleagues this evening, I think, is in looking at this budget report, and I think we all know the context of the budget report. November, we agreed our medium-term financial strategy. That strategy highlighted the financial issues that we expect to face over the next few years. But for the coming year, we can balance our budget by using our business rate surplus from previous years. This allows us to continue to provide services while our residents continue to try and recover from the cost of living crisis. It may also give us more time to understand future funding, though it's looking likely that the long-term funding with us, funding formula, will not be with us until late 2025 at the earliest, clearly post-election. And I think, as we've all said on previous occasions, that this is no way to run any local authority around the country where you could only set your budget for effectively for 1 year and are not able to advance plan. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And we would urge any government, to actually make as an early priority reviewing the funding formula, so local authorities are able to plan further forward and into the future. At our cabinet meeting last month, we considered the feedback from the budget workshops on savings and pressures. We also considered some items that had risen since the workshops, and I gave a verbal update on some items that had emerged since that report had been written. Those items have now been incorporated into the report we're considering this evening. To show how budgeting is an iterative process, for the council version of the budget report, officers will update it for the decision that was made in relation to inflation for councillor allowances. We need to make sure that our budget is aligned to our council priorities and our council plan. And at our March cabinet meeting, we will agree our council delivery plan for the coming year. We've started work on this already, and indeed we're trying to make it more focused. And there'll still be, I think, there'll still be a lot in there, but clearly a much more focused delivery plan. We recognise the pressure the delivery of these projects places on our staff, and I'm looking here, Chair, and I'll add this as an additional recommendation, that we would look for a total around £100,000 additional costs for an 18-month period. That we would look for, of that 100,000, 67,000 of that would fall in 24-25. So the total in spend initially in 24-25 would go up from, first of all, up to 20.331 million, and then with the councillor allowances up to 20.365 million. And I'll make a formal recommendation about that later on. But I think the importance of being able to deliver some of our key projects, we need to set aside, I think, that contingency. For two of those projects, the Royster Learner Pool and the decarbonisation of our leisure centres, they're still subject to a viable business case and funding. But if they can go ahead, they are expected to provide long-term financial benefits, as well as the wider benefits of better facilities that reduce our climate impact. We may be able to capitalise these delivery costs, but at this stage, the important thing is we provide the capacity to deliver these projects that will help make us more sustainable in the future. Turning to the detail of the report itself, yesterday government announced the final settlement for 24-25. This confirmed the grant totals that are included in Table 1 of the report. Table 2 is still considered to be a realistic, prudent forecast of where our funding may end up in future years. But as set out in Appendix D, there are various other scenarios. And in the absence, as I mentioned earlier, of a long-term settlement, there has to be some educated guesswork. Appendix D is our Chief Finance Officer's Section 25 report. This highlights the risks and assumptions, and I would encourage all Cabinet colleagues and members to read that. And it highlights the risks and assumptions involved in setting the budget. Even the more optimistic projections would leave us with a significant savings gap, even before the full impact of the expected increases in our waste contracts are included. Drawing from the conclusion from that appendix, there will be a need to act, and there will certainly be a need for some difficult decisions. But we have the capacity to deliver a medium-term balanced budget. We've run this council prudently since 2019. We've managed to ensure our general fund balances are sound and strong, but nevertheless, we will have difficult decisions to reach. The first of those difficult decisions is to increase council tax by the maximum allowed without a local referendum, and that is what I am proposing as part of our budget. This reflects what was agreed in the medium-term financial strategy. It's what government will assume we've done. We're setting our funding in future years, but gives us the best capacity to deliver the services that our residents value. I think it's worth noting here that clearly these are not confirmed amounts. That would obviously be a council tax increase for our residents of £7.55 a year. So it's effectively around 15p a week. That obviously compares to the Herts County Council, where the proposed council tax increase is £80 a year, and the police commissioner is proposing an increase of an extra £13 a year at Band D. And those are the comparisons that we have from our sort of other preceptors as part of the amount our residents will pay. There is a lot of other detail in the report that contributes to the budget setting process. It's important to note the recommended minimum general fund balance set out in paragraph 8.21. We're asked to approve the in-year budget pressures highlighted in Table 7. And as addition to that table, we're incurring costs in relation to responding to the examination process for the expansion of Luton Airport. As set out in recent strategic planning reports and the recent council motion, it's important that we continue to put forward representations that consider the impact to the district and our residents. This additional cost will be met from the Transport Forum funding that isn't needed, and indeed some salary underspends. Paragraph 8.24 to 8.26 sets out the revenue impacts of capital spend and highlights that we need to keep our capital programme under review to make sure it continues to reflect our current plans. So I think finally, I think sort of Chair, just to I think probably worthwhile me that highlight it. I think this is I think a prudent and cautious assessment of where this council sits at the moment. This administration is not about risking the sustainability of this local authority. That, I think, is important both to us here as councillors, but particularly to our residents and businesses across the district that we support. And that is why I think this is the way forward. And I recommend the budget that we'll go through in a bit more detail in our February meeting at full council in more detail. But I think finally, just to say that if we can now say that in recommendation 2.6, the new total would be, with the two things I've just mentioned there, would be 20.365 million. And then I think finally to say, Chair, that there are a couple of other things that we are looking at, and one of those I think is in response to Herts County Council cutting by 50% member locality budgets, which actually I think will be a huge impact upon many organisations across this district. We will look to see how we can respond to this, possibly through the Shared Prosperity Fund, and I will look to obviously coming back with a bit more detail at full council in relation to that particular point, and explain that in more detail, what we're proposing to do, and indeed once the county council itself has met in a week's time. So, Chair, with that, I would recommend those recommendations, and indeed that change to recommendation 2.6, which at the new total will be 20.365 million.
Thank you very much, Councillor Albert. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Albert, firstly? I'm not seeing anyone. I'm going to ask one, though. Given Mr. Gove has asked us to produce our productivity plans and have those with the House for publication by July 2024, do we need to set aside some additional resource, both monetary and officer, to do what Mr. Gove is asking this council to do?
Could I maybe get either Mr. Roach or Mr. Cooper to respond to that, as how they see the situation? I think for both the staffing internally and the resourcing questions that we've obviously had concerns about previously.
I don't know. The government has yet to supply any information in any level of detail to us about what is expected. So until that is provided, until we've seen the template and know how much work that will take, I simply can't answer whether it's going to require more resource or not. So that may have to be a point we revisit nearer the time. It's going to depend on the level of detail they need us to go into and what sort of turnaround times we are all provided as a sector.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any further questions. So the recommendations have been moved. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Willoughby. I will now move us into the debate. Councillor Willoughby got there first, so I'll take Councillor Willoughby, then Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I think absolutely thank you, Ian, and all officers for their work on this. I think this is absolutely fantastic report and the work behind it. Regarding Mr. Gove's productivity measures, I'm a little bit surprised to see that we've got, well, if I just go through, number one, transformation services to make better use of resources. I don't know a council that hasn't done that, even the ones that have now gone into Section 114. Number two, opportunity to take advantage of advances in technology. I think we do a damn good job at that, as actually has been set out by Councillor Albert earlier this evening. 3 and 4 I really struggle with, because they feel very political. I wasn't necessarily going to ask a question or debate particularly much in this, but I do not understand how we can find ways to reduce wasteful spending within the systems and provide, as a council, if we're looking at what waste is, because I don't understand what they mean by what waste is there. I think there's lots of things that we could consider waste that we consider added value as a council. We are a council that does a lot in our communities. We are a council that provides a lot more than just statutory services. So if they're going to look at waste as anything other than the very bare minimum, then I think we might as well not ever meet again, because basically we'll just sort out getting the bins emptied, and we'll meet once a year to sort that out, and then we'll go home. I think it's really quite odd. Barriers preventing activity that the government can help to reduce or remove. Why haven't they done that already? If they can reduce or remove those barriers, why isn't that done? That is bizarre to me. And I think if this adds additional resource and cost, then I'm not really sure what help they're providing to us as a council, or any council across this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think that point around what central government might view as waste and what our residents might view as waste is quite interesting, because I think over certainly the last 5 years, Councillor Albert, executive members and our officers who support our work have worked incredibly hard to protect the services that residents do value, whether those are parks and playgrounds, our outdoor swimming pools, playing our part in reducing the health burden on the NHS through having active communities, etc., etc. So yes, I agree. It's quite ironic that we're being asked to reduce wasteful expenditure while also potentially being asked to do an exercise which in and of itself is going to be inherently wasteful. Anyway, Councillor Allen.
Probably just adding on to what Councillor Willoughby has said, really, but I'd be very grateful for a translation of of the sort of vague word salad that we've been presented with here to deal with. There's no really other way to describe it. I understand Michael didn't exactly write this himself, but it's been purposely done to be very vague, and it's been left to very much our own interpretation of what exactly it is that we're going to do. It does seem to be a case of, if you need help, ask. But we've been screaming for help for years, and now it just feels like all we're doing is screaming endlessly into the void, and there's not much more that we can honestly do whilst we're expected to meet the services that people need, that people deserve, and meet the targets that was expected of us as well, and perform it all well and fantastically with no money. We keep saying what we need, and then we just get this back. And it just feels like there's not much purpose in this right now. And it's really, really sucks.
Thank you very much. I'm aware that we've unintentionally perhaps moved on to debating Mr. Gove and the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities rather than the revenue budget. So I will try and chair better and ask colleagues, can we, if we're making points, link them back in some way to the revenue budget? On that, I'm sure Councillor Jarvis won't let me down.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. I'm not sure it's accurate, but I mean, I think as Willoughby's already said, the transformation of services and taking opportunities is something that we have done, but we clearly need to continue to do. And as do all local authorities, it's something that you never finish. You need to, however much you've done, you need to do more of it. So it's not unreasonable to say that people should be doing that. It's unreasonable not to recognise that most councils, I think, are doing that. And there are some barriers to do it, which perhaps we deal with under item 4. Item 3, I think, depends a bit to the way you take it. I mean, one could take the view that we don't have any wasteful activities, and we certainly don't have any discredited equality, diversity and inclusion programmes. So we can summarise what we've done about wasteful activities. We could say we haven't got any, and we can summarise what we've done about discredited programmes. We don't have those either. Now, I suspect that's not the answer that Mr. Gove wants, if indeed he's still Secretary of State by the time this gets submitted, of course. But I think that, I mean, as we've heard from Anthony Roche, we don't yet have any detailed guidance, and it would be premature to put a lot of effort into answering a bunch of poorly defined questions. So it seems to me that it shouldn't have any impact on the revenue budget that we're discussing this evening, other than to leave it exactly the same.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think, colleagues, given we've had minimal debate around the actual revenue budget itself, it seems to me that once again, thanks to Councillor Albert, to Ian Cooper and the team for working under increasing duress and strain and stress within the system, and coming up once again for us with a balanced budget, which is going to continue to add value and support the people that live, work and do business and visit our places across the entire district. So I think we can commend this budget and the recommendations to full council. Councillor Albert.
Only just to add, and it's not me being pedantic, but can I also just add to that list of thanks to my deputy councillor Matt Barnes, who's obviously a new councillor, has been a huge I think benefit to me in supporting me as my deputy, and I think also in obviously supporting Mr. Cooper and his team. So obviously particularly like to thank Matt for all his work.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think we can ensure that that is minuted and recorded, because our deputies do provide a fantastic amount of support to our executive members throughout the year. And we very rarely see or hear from them in these meetings, but the work that they do should very much be championed. And without them, I think some of us would find it more difficult to cover off all of the angles and ensure that we are applying the level of scrutiny that we expect to the work that we do here. Any further comments or debate on the revenue budget, colleagues? Nope, that one was proposed and the recommendations have been seconded. So could we have a vote, please, Susan?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of this evening's business, colleagues. The next meeting of Cabinet is Tuesday, the 19th of March. And of course, we will be setting our budget at full council on the 29th of February. So thank you very much for your time, and I will see you later.